Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be taking a look at the underrated Pokemon in Regulation F. We're going to kick this list off immediately with a Corviknight. And what I like the most about Corviknight is its ability to sit in front of a lot of the board state right now. We'll get into it in a bit, but that's also going to be its downfall. But as of right now, it has a very, very good job of sitting in front of Landorus and especially the Icy Wind Fluttermanes because one, Landorus cannot hit it, and Icy Wind Fluttermane, if they try to Icy Wind you or your partner, which they would want to do more often than not on that style of team because it is their speed control, you're going to bounce that back with Mirror Armor, right? And now all of a sudden they're going to be slowing themselves down on that Fluttermane slot and losing a lot of the value it provides. Now, as great as this is, yes, if Incineroar wants to switch in, you're bouncing back that Intimidate. You can't get intimidated. It is a phenomenal piece to just sit on the board and do what you want it to do. The problem is it has a tendency to not do anything in return, right? Like, yeah, okay, you can run Brave Bird, you can run Iron Head, but it's not really coming off that high of an attack stat, 87. So you have a tendency, and the problem with Corviknight is it tends to have that ability where, the ability is phenomenal, but the ability being so good can only carry it so far, and they're going to play around it. They're going to bully everything that is not named Corviknight, and then deal with Corviknight later. So trying to fix that is kind of going to be the secret, I guess, to unlocking Corviknight's full potential. And I really do think Iron Head is very good right now. I think if you're going to run a Steel type, you really want something that's able to pressure off Fluttermane. Now, I haven't run any damage calc, so Heavy Slam may be better in that regard, and it probably is. So just keep that in mind if you're looking for that Steel move. But then the other concept, you can do bulk up to start, if they're going to ignore you, let's start setting up, right? Let's start getting through some things, right? So bulk up is a very good option. I believe you get Iron Defense as well. You also get Body Press if you wanted to take this route, which is pretty good too, right? There's a lot of options here. The one main downfall outside of, just trying to have to get your damage output to that next level is honestly just Raging Bolt being on every other team, right? If you can find a way to get Corviknight utilized while dealing with Raging Bolt, I think there's a chance. Now, the banded Landorus Therian teams have picked up in usage. Now, I'm not suggesting that banded Landorus Therian is the perfect partner for Corviknight by any means, because I think putting a choice band on Landorus Therian really requires a little bit more speed control or immediate speed control than Corviknight is able to give. Yes, you get Tailwind, but it's a very passive form of Tailwind, right? You don't have a speed stat. You're not really going for like Tailwind immediate like you would with a Tornadus. However, typing wise and dealing with opposing Gastrodon, I think Landorus is something that could make Corviknight really excel to that next level, right? Like if you get the Corviknight on the field after the Incineroar is on, that Flare Blitz is still going to hurt. This is where having Intimidate in the back and something that can remove it is also very strong. So I see some potential here. And overall, once again, I think Corviknight has potential. It did pick up a couple, I believe, top 128s in Birmingham. So there's something here. I think there is definitely a piece for Corviknight to be explored, and I'd be curious to see how it performs at the European International Championships next weekend. Next up, I really want to be talking about Gastrodon right now, and I think every single time I do one of these Pokemon that are underexplored lists, Gastrodon ends up being here. And just the fact that Water Urshifu is so prominent in the metagame right now, yes, you can put a Raging Bolt on your team to deal with that super effectively. But Gastrodon kind of invalidates the Water Ursh in a sense where I'm allowed to build the rest of my team pretty weak to Surging Strikes as long as I'm able to leverage my Gastrodon, right? A lot of the times, even just having Gastrodon on the team prevents them from bringing Urshifu Water all 3 games, right? There's at least one game where they're going to go, okay, they're going to bring Gastrodon, I'm not going to bring my water bear. And because of that, I think there is potential here. Of course, Storm Drain is the ability we are trying to highlight with that by redirecting all those water type attacks. And of course, you have the ability to Terra out of that grass weakness, which I think is definitely something to consider. And generally speaking, you probably want to go, I think Fairy is super consistent. Fairy's pretty consistent. You can also go something that resists grass a little bit better as well if you choose. But you're really looking at just consistent ground coverage here in Earth Power. And leverage on opposing Lando eyes, right? Because Landorus Eye is going to be your ground type of choice 90% of the time. So there's got to be a reason why I would use Gastrodon over Lando Eye. One being that you're going to redirect all those water bear attacks. And two, you're actually going to match up relatively well into the opposing Landorus's just by dropping Ice Beam, just by having still access to that Earth Power, right? So a lot of those cores that rely on, Landorus to sit in front of the opposing Landorus for a few turns, right? You punish that a little bit more. Of course, if you want to go Muddy Water or some sort of water move as well, do you still get Scald? You do not. Man. Anyways, that Scald nerf got to be one of the biggest complaints I have about Pokemon. But anyways, you also get access to some more passive moves in terms of Yawn, which I definitely think is a key piece to Gastrodon's moveset. And if you do something like Yawn Leftovers or Yawn Citrus Berry, and then you just run Protect, right? So now you can Yawn and you can punish all those setup pieces, especially that Calm Mind Raging Bolt, right? You can go Terra Fairy Yawn, and I am pretty confident you should be able to, I don't want to say 1v1 the setup Raging Bolt, because if they get the +6 special defense, it's going to get really annoying to break down. But early on in the game, if you start putting Yawn out, right, it prevents them from setting up, and your other pieces can definitely help take care of that. One of the key things I like with Gastrodon generally is Flutter Mane, because Flutter Mane can't get hit by the close combat from Urshifu since it's a ghost type. And then, of course, with Gastrodon beside Flutter Mane, Water Urshifu is effectively useless, right? Now, yeah, they can start clicking close combat into the Gastrodon, but it doesn't want to be in front of the Flutter Mane anyways. So the concept here being just really solid type synergy, and just being able to punish that Urshifu. And then Flutter Mane as well, if Gastrodon is playing that passive game versus that setup Raging Bolt, you also now have Flutter Mane able to deal with that Raging Bolt later on, as opposed to, letting the Raging Bolt get the +3/+4 special defense, and then not being able to break through it with your Flutter Mane anymore. So that's a pretty cool tech there. That's a pretty cool core. But generally in speaking, Gastrodon right now, I think it's a little slept on. You could get cute, like if you're really trying to utilize this to break, that Bolt balance with that Calm Mind Bolt, you could try to tease them a little bit with a Covert Cloak. The concept being there, you're going to get out of the Fake Out cycle and still pressure Yawn every single turn, which I think is really big, really important. And then, of course, in that case, you probably either want to go maybe Poison to resist that Grass, because Rillaboom will be a problem. But there's a lot of options here in terms of what Gastrodon can do, and I'm surprised it really hasn't seen that big result yet. Now, I get it. It's a Gastrodon, guys. Its stats kind of mid. But there's potential here to be that disruptive piece that kind of just break the ability of your opponent to play the game the way they want to play the game. And anytime you can do that, I think it is a very strong option. So there's definitely something to be said for Gastrodon moving forward in Regulation F. Along the lines of not letting your opponent play the game the way they want to play the game is going to be Thundurus. And it's going to be that disruptive piece that really just wants to utilize the Prankster ability, right? You can go Thunder Wave for not only speed control, but we all know what Thunder Wave's secondary effect is. That full paralysis definitely is going to get in your opponent's head, is going to make things a problem for your opponent. You also have access to what I believe is one of the best special supporting moves in the game, or supporting moves in the game versus special attackers, I should say. Eerie Impulse. And dropping your opponent's speed stat dropping your opponent's special attack stat by 2 stages is really strong, especially in the world where, Raging Bolt wants to be here, Landorus wants to be here, and I know it's an electric type attack, but yes, it does work on the Landorus incarnate still, so you can just Eerie Impulse, get that guy down to -2, and all of a sudden, what once was a huge threat to sweep your team is no longer that big of a threat, right? You get to use it on the Flutter Manes as well, right? So just the damage mitigation here is very strong, especially if you can find something to set up beside the Thundurus, right? I think that's going to be the key here, is that you want Thundurus beside something that's going to be able to utilize and capitalize off of the fact that you have this incredible consistent combination of, well, I'm not going to let you play the game. Of course, you also get cool things like Taunt, you get Rain Dance, you get a lot of options as well. I believe Sunny Day too, so you can do pretty much any weather team you want with Thundurus, right? And then you can go Protect, you can go Electro Web, you can go, I think Wild Bolt Storm is probably your most consistent, right? Like I believe something like this, Wild Bolt Storm and Rain Dance, just Similar page to the Thundies, the Torns, where you're going to go Rain Dance and then send Bleak Wind. In this case, you're going to go Rain Dance and then just send 100% accurate Wild Bolt Storms. Once again, more of a chance to paralyze your target as well. And you're just going to be that disruptor in the metagame. And I think that's something that is needed right now, right? Right now, the metagame is very, well, we're going to cycle around and everybody's just being able to do what they want to do, right? If your team does this, well, my team is going to go in. I'm going to be able to do this whenever I want, right? So seeing Thundurus be able to deny a lot of those options is phenomenal. And once again, you don't have to do it this way. You can go Taunt Thunderbolt, I think is also super fair if you don't really want the rain, right? Tons of options here as well. Item-wise, once again, I still like Covert Cloak, especially on these disruptive Pokemon. You want to be able to disrupt for as long as possible and not get shut down. So Covert Cloak, of course, is always going to be good here. The other thing you can do, I think, is pretty fun, is Citrus Berry. Be able to just, the longevity, right? So you either want to Covert Cloak and you want to be able to always be dealing with your annoying pieces, or you want to be Citrus Berry and just be on the field for longer with your annoy ability. I guess for lack of a better word, because that's definitely not a word. But you know what I mean? Like, you want to be able to have one of those two options, right? You want to sit on the field for as long as possible and annoy your opponent, or you want to just annoy your opponent up front with the Covert Cloak and say, I don't really care if I'm going to go down quickly. I've got my disruption up. Take me out. Let me bring my new Pokemon in while you're at -2, while you're Thunderlaved, you know, and that, or while you're taunted, and then you can go from there. Right, like I said, setup beside this is cool, but as always, guys, like, there's something about double genies. Either of these two pieces are actually pretty good. I know I suggested Landorus a lot. Landorus Therian probably would have made this list had that banded Landorus team not been viable. So you're going to see me suggest Landorus a lot. I do think Landorus Therian, same with regular Landorus, of course, not underrated pieces, but very, very solid pieces that really appreciate what's going on from Thundurus. Right, of course, you have other options too. I think Urshifu Water as well. Any really water type that wants to put pressure on the board as well is very good. I think Water Pawn as well, right? Even Urshifu Water. Any of these guys, right? Like, to punish the ground types, right? Like Thundurus, yeah, it can disrupt the ground type, but it can't really punish it. So I think the ability to punish it besides Thundurus is also going to be very strong. So keep that in mind when using Thundy. Very good piece to just annoy your opponents and not let them do what they want to be doing. Moving on, we're going to continue the theme of weather, I guess, because, you know, Thundurus could set rain. Pelipper, of course, with that drizzle ability, probably, I think it's the only Drizzlemon right now, but we're not going to get into that. But regardless, being able to set rain whenever you want is a huge advantage. Now, normally in this metagame, you see the Torns or the Thunduruses that I just mentioned set that rain dance, right? And that's really how you're going to get your weather control on the board. But that is a little tough because you don't get the ability to just put rain on the board whenever you want. You have to have Thundurus on the board and you have to click that move, which, don't get me wrong, is not bad by any means. However, the ability to, let's say, lead something like Archaludon and a Scarf Urshifu, which, by the way, these are going to be my two suggested partners for this. And I think you need both of them for Rain to function right now, or at least for Pelipper to function. And you can lead something like AV Archaludon and Choice Scarf, Choice Scarf Urshifu with U-turn, right? So now your opponent has to figure out, are you going to click Terra Water Surging Strikes with the ability to swap in Pelipper over the Archaludon and blow something up with the Surging Strikes? Or are you going to play it a little bit more passive, where you're going to U-turn out into the Pelipper, get the rain up, and then Electro Shot, right? And that is kind of the concept, I think, where Pelipper excels and why Drizzle and that ability is really going to be a niche for it moving forward in Regulation F. Yes, I know there's a bunch of Fluttermane, and it doesn't really match up well. And guys, I'm going to be honest, I absolutely hate this bird. I cannot stand Pelipper, but there is a spot for it right now. And I mean, technically you could do the same thing with Politoed. I much prefer Politoed, but the flying typing and being able to hurricane through something, like the Ogerpons, right? Like, breaking through Ogerpons is phenomenal with a hurricane, right? Breaking through the Urshifus with a hurricane, right? Just hurricane on its own is great. Hurricane when you are setting the rain is 20 times better, right? I remember running a Zapdos team back in the day, and I had Hurricane on it, but I didn't have Rain on the team. Like, Hurricane was a great move. It was so good that we would use it anyways. But imagine now you always get the Rain when you want it if you're smart with your weather control, and you can just start dropping Hurricanes. Of course, you get access to stuff like Weather Ball. You get access, I believe, Helping Hand as well, right? So I don't know how it uses Helping Hand. I guess if you have ideas on how Pelipper uses Helping Hand, let me know in the comments down below. My guess, best I got, is it's clapping its wings together. I got nothing else. I don't know if that really counts though. But anyways, or their hands under the wings. I don't know. I'm not going to try to figure this out anymore. I've wasted enough of your time. But there's a lot of cool things. I guess Killing Water's cute. But more often than not, you're running Hurricane, Weather Ball, probably either Tailwind and Wide Guard, if not both, and then probably just Protect. Something like this is what you're going to see, right? I think Wide Guard has a case to be made for itself as well. But I don't know. I think Rain in general is a little slept on right now. Yes, it has picked up a little bit, but I don't think it's picked up enough, and I think it's very, very good moving forward. Of course, as always, you do have to worry about the Raging Bolts when you're running Pelipper or Urshifu specifically, so that's probably one of the reasons it's not like everywhere. But once again, if you deal with that, maybe with, like I said, you go Assault Vest. Archaludon does get access to the Snarl, right? So all of a sudden now you can start mitigating the damage from that Raging Bolt, and you have 3 other slots to help deal with Raging Bolt as well, right? Just other things to consider. I think there's that one team as well floating around that does have that Pelipper, Archaludon, Earth, Shenpao core, which I think is really, really solid right now. If you're looking for ideas on how to build out a Pelipper Rain team, I think this is really solid. And the last Pokemon on this list today is going to be Cresselia. And as of up until last weekend, I should say, this Pokemon was going to be Porygon 2. Because the way the Trick Room teams were orienting, they were trying for that whole Cresselia Ursaluna concept, right? And I'm going to leave Ursaluna here as if I could type, that would be great. I'm going to leave Ursaluna here as its side partner here, because this is the suggested partner for Cresselia. If you are running Cresselia, I almost think I don't want to say you have to run Ursaluna, but the synergy here is so phenomenal. It's very tough to justify not running it. Right? And this is the way these Trick Room cores were going up until last week, or at least the results of the Trick Room cores were headed, right? And, you get Trick Room up with your Cresselia, which I think is you're going to suggest that's why you would use it, right? You're going to get Trick Room up. You can go either Moonblast or Psychic, maybe both sometimes, but I think Ice Beam for the Landorus is very, very strong as well. So you're looking at something like this, and then you have that Lunar Blessing. And the ability to heal your Ursaluna, the ability to heal your Cresselia is phenomenal, right? It just makes it very, very difficult to take down Ursaluna as well, and other pieces if you have them on the team. Very, very tough to overcome this, and the stats here are ridiculous. I know it did catch a nerf coming into this generation, but it's still a really, really bulky piece. And the main issue with Cresselia, that once again, similar to that Corviknight, yeah, it's going to sit on the field. But you need to find a way to do something in return. I wouldn't even blame anybody for trying to go modest and getting aggressive, right? As long as I don't know what the calc would be, but I would go aggressive with this Cresselia if you want it on the field. Once you hit some other calcs, right? You can probably live a Wicked Blow. I don't know how easily, right? But I would look at those calcs like Living Wicked Blow, Living Spec Shadow Ball, and then I would probably just dump into Special Attack, because you need to find a way to do something. You could also, of course, go for Calm Mind if you don't have the support or needing the support for the Ursaluna, right? I guess you could go Calm Mind, Psychic, Lunar Blessing as well instead of Ice Beam, right? Because if you're Calm Mind, you're already beating the Landorus and Carnets. So there's always that as well. Probably looking at a Terra Poison or a Terra Steel. Poison is cool outside of Psy Spam stuff, so just keep that in mind. Poison's probably consistent. Steel also very consistent outside of Flare Blitz. They all have their weaknesses, but you're looking at Steel or Poison because I think you want to be walling the Landorus and taking advantage of that Levitate ability. You don't care that you're going to be weak to ground because of Levitate, right? And then generally speaking, you're looking at something I think Safety Goggles or Rocky Helmet are probably where you're looking here. But overall, this is the direction that these Trick Room teams were headed. Back to my initial statement here. And then out of nowhere, okay, maybe not out of nowhere, but in the background, and I came out to play this past weekend's events, was the Porygon Ursaluna, right? And once again, this was going to be a Porygon 2. I was about to suggest Porygon 2, and I'm like, there were like 3 in top 8 of Merida, and then there were like 4 in top 16 of Birmingham. So clearly everybody caught on to the Porygon 2, so I can't really suggest it as an underrated Pokemon anymore. But everything about Cresselia, especially when paired with Ursaluna, should be good. I don't know what else to say about it, right? Like, you do good things, right? Cresselia is a very bulky Pokemon. It is very good at getting Trick Room off, and it is very difficult to take down at times, right? Generally speaking, you're looking at, your standard Trick Room core here with a Moongus and Incin, right? And the main issue, though, is, once again, it's a standard Trick Room core, right? What I'm doing is no surprise to anybody, right? There's no real, I have, the ability to go for a Tailwind mode. I don't have the ability to, set Trick Room up in funny ways. I get Fake Out Trick Room. I got Redirect Trick Room. Of course, I have the Trick Room into the, a U-turn or a Parting Shot for my Ursaluna Burn Guts to activate, right? But outside of that, I identify all of that in Team Preview, and I'm going, okay, what's my best way to cover those options? Whereas with the Porygon 2 options right now, there seems to be a little bit more of a faster mode combined with it. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that here. Maybe you do go for a little bit of a faster mode beside it, right? And maybe this is the way you want to close out a core like this. Regardless, though, the key point here is that Cresselia, I do think, is a very good piece right now, and I do think it's being slept on a little bit. Once again, it's seen its fair share of success in this format, probably more than any of the other Pokemon I've suggested, which is why it's near the end of this video. However, Porygon 2 seems to be taking place for it, which is fair, super viable, but overall, I do think there's still a spot with Cresselia, just because you don't need the Terra to spam Earthquake with Ursaluna, right? Just the ability to be in Trick Room, click Earthquake, click Lunar Blessing. You can just send that probably 4 straight turns, and you're probably going to be doing all right. Now, once again, there's just ways to play around it. I know I rambled a little bit on the Cresselia here, guys, so I do apologize for that. But overall, if you guys do enjoy this type of video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help with the channel, and of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in a future video.